Hey, what is happening, you awesome people? Welcome back to the iOS 10 development course for self-learners. In this video, we're going to be talking about running some code. So far, what we have done in this course is just played around with the actual layout of the applications, but that's not the core thing which we should be focused on. So, without any further ado, let's talk about code. We're going to open up Xcode Project. We are running the same project from the previous video called Hello World. And if you remember, previously we were working on storyboard, which is just the outline of the actual layout of our application. But now we're going to go into View Controller. And View Controller is where our code resides. So let's talk about what's going on here. On the top here, everything in green is called comment. Anything right after double slash is something that computer knows to skip over. Comment is something that's actually there to tell you or tell other developers who are writing codes in your application about what's going on. So it gives you general information about who made this code and when did you make it and stuff like that. Also, it gives you information about what's going on in your code or what you can do in a certain function of the code, which we will be talking about in a later video. Anyways, so just know that comments are for us to understand and for computer to skip over. The next thing is import UI kit. Import would just bring in something to our code, and UI kit, which is that something, is basically the template, or also called a framework, which is created by other developers to help us out so we don't have to keep writing the same code all the time. So just to help each other out, developers have made these frameworks for us to use. We will get into more details about what it is in a later video again, but just so you know, there are a whole bunch of these available which you can simply search for by just writing many different words on the screen or alphabets, and it'll tell you and predict what kind of frameworks are available. Alrighty, and the next thing is class. Class is basically a category of certain things in your application. So anything that can move and that has life is called animal, or it could be called animal. And there could be different functions and methods to that class. A bear would have different functionality to it in compared to a human that walks and does this almost the same thing, except for the fact that it has more intelligence to it. So that would be an extra function to it within the same category, if that makes sense. We'll get to that in a later date as well, but just to know what classes are, these are basically a category of things with different functions or methods to it. And right beside it is the actual name of this class, which we donated by calling it View Controller. And these colon represent what kind of class it is. So here it is UI View Controller. And just to get into more details about what kind of class it is, we're going to press Command on our controller, on our keyboard, and click on it. This gives you a whole bunch of different information about the actual template that was created for us and what this class can do. So there are all these things that we can use for this class, which are very helpful, and it actually tells you how much of our job is made easier by making these template classes and stuff. Anyways, let's move on. Just like any other software, they have created a go back option here, and by clicking that we can go back to the same screen that we were on previously. Right after the type of class, if you guys notice, there are curly braces here. These represent that this class starts from here, and to end the class we have to have the other curly braces at the end. And to know exactly which curly braces corresponds to which, we're just going to hover over it, and we're going to move the cursor on it front and back by playing around with the arrow buttons on our keyboard. And if you notice that this one right here brightens up, and this tells you that this corresponds to this curly bracket. And anything that's written inside of these two brackets would correspond to our class, which is called View Controller again. Alrighty. These things you don't really have to worry about, but let's just go over them so you know what's going on. Override, func, F-U-N-C, func is representative of the word function, which is basically an attribute to our class, and the function is called viewDidLoad. viewDidLoad is a function that deals with something to do in our application once the application has loaded and everything has shown up on the screen. So after we have seen everything on the screen, whatever happens after that by clicking on this button or writing the email, whatever happens after that, we're going to write that code inside of this function right here. As it says, do any additional setup after loading the view. Alrighty? Again, it starts from this curly bracket and it stops at this curly bracket as well. An override function basically just means we know that this viewDidLoad function was created by somebody for us, but we're going to add some extra things to it. Again, there's another function called didReceiveMemoryWarning. This function is helpful if your application is too big and it uses a lot of memory to a point where it might crash the application as well. So whatever we can do to make some space in the memory in case, we're going to write that code here. Again, it says dispose of any resources that can be recreated. And override function again tells us that we know that the function was created for us, but we're going to add some extra functionality to it. Alrighty. And now that we are familiar with what's going on the screen, about the comments, import framework, some classes, different kind of functions to each one of them, and every class has the name of it, and colon represents the type of the class, and then brackets start, and they also end. Whatever is written in between these two curly brackets would be actually related to the class. And then functions, which could be overridden. Anyways, now that we are familiar to what's going on the screen, again, we are going to write some code. Now, if you remember that we can hide all these extra panels off of the screen just to make some space, there was an extra panel right here as well. Now, this panel is actually called the debug area, and it's only for developers to see. Whatever information is represented in this area is only for developers to see, and it does not show up in the application, so none of the users of the application would ever be able to see it, and it's only for us to see, just so we know what our code is doing in case we needed to. Alright, so for today's video, we are actually going to see what our code is doing just for ourselves, and it's not going to show up in the application. So basically it's just going to show up in the debug area. And we're going to start off by printing something for us. As soon as the viewDidLoad is happening, which basically is just going to wait for everything to load on the screen, and then it's going to run our code, which is print. And if you guys notice that these are all the predictions that we have, we can use any of them. We're going to use the one on the top right here. We're going to use quotation marks, and we're going to write inside of it hello there, and make sure that the bracket is closed as well. And let's see if it actually runs. So whatever is currently running in the simulator, we're going to stop that, and it's going to load everything back again, compile it. Okay. So as soon as everything has loaded, which is not loaded yet, okay, it's going to print something for us, whatever we wrote inside of these curly brackets and quotation marks, which was hello there. Alrighty, this was our first bit of code that we ran. We can also make it say your app is running. Again, make sure that it's in the quotation marks along with the brackets as well. Stop and compile it again. Build successful. Again, everything is gone away from here, erased. And as soon as the app has run, we come back here and it tells us, hello there, your app is running. Alrighty, that is all for this video. I hope you guys understand what's going on in this view controller file. And I hope you are just familiar with classes, comments, frameworks that we can import, and whatever we talked about. You don't have to be a master of it. I just want you to know that these are the things that are residing in our code currently. Alrighty, and I'll see you guys in the next one.